Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's live stream. We've got our adorable little babies with Layla and Pretty Bird and Blue and Charlie over there. They're foraging in the rain, as you can see. Got a couple of chickens going in and out. And then there's Nugget. Nugget the goose. Look at her go. She just stays out with the geese. Like that's what she does. Nugget will stay out with the geese throughout the entire storm. It does not matter how much it rains. Nugget will stay outside in the rain with the geese. She genuinely believes, and I know this for a fact, this is not me making up some story or reading into something, genuinely believes that she's a goose. And the reason why she does actually has to do with raising her. She, as a chick, she joined us as our very first chicken. And when she joined us, the only other birds we had in the house were cockatiels. Birds she really. Hey, ladies. Hi, pretty girls. Excuse me. Excuse me. I gotta get this stuff out of here and get some stuff cleaned up. Excuse. The only other bird that she really interacted with was Pretty Bird. So as a young chick, very impressionable, still imprinting and all that, right? She was immediately starting to associate her own identity with that of a goose. Growing up, which is a male goose, she even the tone in which she does her noises and in which she speaks is very different from all the other chickens. And I think it's because she's actually learned to mimic the geese. And Nugget will stay out. So we have occasional chickens that will run out. And I think it has to do with the fact that a lot of these chickens grew up around geese and grew up around, you know, the geese staying out in the rain. But in Nugget's case, she doesn't come inside at all. Like every other chicken will come indoors as soon as the rain like picks up and it gets more extreme or we get a major thunderstorm. But Nugget, she doesn't. And yes, I know I got a bunch of straw over here. I got to clean all this crap up, guys. My chickens went to town. I had a nice little neat pile. I was cleaning out the coop and it ran late. I wasn't feeling too well. I've been sick, been fighting this sickness for the last 3 weeks, upper respiratory kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, I'll take care of it tomorrow. And I left it, not thinking anything of it, which was really stupid because, of course, my chickens went at it and spread it everywhere inside of this aviary. Can y'all hear that? That's a thunder rolling, and that's a rolling thunder. Look, she's not phased. She don't care. Now get, watch. And she'll actually do the stance. Like she'll stand like the geese do when the rain picks up. All right, so let me put it this way. If you guys want to, if you're curious about it, after this live stream, or even before it's over, whatever you want to do. Sorry, I got some poop on my hand. That's part of the game. But you can, if my geese don't show you guys today, but you guys can look up how geese behave during rainstorms and during thunderstorms. One of the things they'll do is they will stand up very straight, kind of pointing, arrowing their body in the direction of the rain, the hail, the storm, whatever it is, right? So their beak will be pointed upwards towards the storm, towards the rain or the hail. And there's actually some evidence that suggests that they do this because they're focusing on the hail coming at them and they're actually avoiding the hail from hitting their beak. And it's a learned behavior. It's partially genetic and partially learned. And Because the reason why they think it's partially genetic is because quite literally, birds do this all over the world. Birds that have zero connection to each other, that would have never naturally met each other in the wild, like on different continents, but they all show very similar, almost identical behaviors when it comes to how they manage these storms and how they avoid getting hit by, say, a hard, large piece of hail, which could break off their beak and quite literally. Hi, Nugget. You hear how you hear her her buck buck, her honk. It might as well be a honk. If you listen to all the other chickens, buck 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 buck. Nugget, Nugget. You hear how she bucks? She goes, "Brr." Like she has this really, really, but she goes, "Brr." Like that's just her thing. I think, personally, I think it's because she grew up trying to mimic Pretty Bird because he was, oh, what the hell is this doing here? He was all she knew. So she grew up trying to mimic him. And that's how she started making the lower sounds. Go ahead and feed these guys. Hey, boys. Hi, boys. Oh, my goodness. No? Okay. Thank you. Anyway, let's go see the goslings. See how they like the storm. This is the very first time that. The hell is that? Sorry. Oh, no, wait. I remember what that is. This is the very first time that I have not put the goslings in and locked them up during a storm. Because they're now big enough and old enough to do this. What's wrong, Layla? Layla, what is it? What are you mad about? What are you mad about, Layla? What was that all about? What was that all about? Sorry, apparently my live was failing. Brady Bird, what are you doing? Brady Bird. Brady Bird, where's your babies? Brady Bird, where's your babies? Look, where's your babies? The babies are leaving. He's always right on them. He's so going to freak out when he realizes they're gone. Pretty Bird. Pretty Bird, where'd the babies go? Pretty Bird. Pretty Bird. And yes, these are some of my Canada. These are actually some of my Canada geese. And yes, I legally own them. For anybody wondering, it is possible. You got to jump to a couple of hoops, but it's possible. Layla. There's number 5. I was like, where's number 5? There's number 5. And these babies are going to be looking for homes here. I am trying to create a specific flock. The main reason why we hatched out all of Layla's eggs, or as many as would hatch. There you go, pre-bird caught up. What's wrong, Blue? Anyway, the main reason why we did. Hi, buddy. Hi, buddy. Hi, handsome. How you doing, pretty bird? How you doing, pretty bird? Hi, buddy. I know, I love you too. Sorry for the bad reception. We've got Storm. Oh, thanks, Freebird. That's my ankle. Look, there she is again. Just hanging out here in a storm. She sees no reason for her not to hang out in a storm. Nugget. Nugget. Can you not? She's not going to stop. She's going to continue to hang out in the storm, in the rain. Hi, Bebes. And now that the rain's picking up, as you can see, my chickens are all indoors or underneath the aviary, underneath cover. And Nugget's over there with the geese because she's a goose. She literally identifies as a goose. I'm telling you guys, this chicken is convinced that she's a goose. Now keep in mind, when baby birds are born, especially birds like geese and chickens, okay, and ducklings, one of the things they do is they self-identify with their parentage. It's actually one of the big ways that we end up with hybrids. So for an example, when Nugget was a baby, she identified with whatever was the closest to herself, which at the time was Pretty Bird, who is, of course, a gander. So part of her thinks that she's a goose because that's what she grew up seeing, that's imprinting on. I hope that makes sense. Whenever goslings are born, they see their parents and they imprint on their parents' appearance, their parents' sounds, their parents' behavior. They imprint on their parents. And that imprint causes the goslings to figure out who they are, what they are, right? And also has a huge influence on who they mate with when they grow up and they become older. So once they're adults, the fact that they imprinted on their parents when they were babies and grew up with their parents when they were babies actually is a big reason why you won't generally, commonly, see say for an example, Canada goose mating with, let's say, a domestic white goose. Okay, Canada geese being the ones that look like that one, but bigger. And then domestic geese are the ones that look like her, that golden one right there. Or for an example, I can drop my food. Or for an example, like these guys, those are domestic breeds. And you won't usually see them mating with them because as goslings, they imprinted on their parents. And the imprint on their parents is part of how they identified who they are, what breed they are, what species they are, and who they're supposed to be mating with when they become older, when they become mature. You're a weird little rooster, you know that? Anyway, but when a gosling is raised by different parents, so for an example, if a gosling is raised by humans, that imprint on the parents doesn't really happen, especially if it's raised by itself. Now, if it's raised with siblings, it still has a way to self-identify because there are siblings around, right? And they can recognize like, hey, we all look the same. And even though mom's different, we're all the same. So they kind of still have some of that self-identification through their siblings. But if you raise one gosling all by itself, right, then that gosling is going to only have you to identify with, right? Which can later cause confusion in their lives when it comes to whether or not they're even going to attempt to mate with another goose. Sometimes it causes them to just openly mate with any goose, and sometimes it causes them to not mate with geese at all and actually only consider humans potential mating partners. So this is the reason why Pretty Bird actually struggled with the whole mating thing for a long time. Pretty Bird is our gander right there, standing next to the golden goose, right behind her. You see kind of that white dot right there? That's his cheek. He's a hybrid Canada goose. I raised him by hand. He imprinted on me and my husband, and he didn't have any other birds around until he was 6 months old, and that's when Nugget came around. And by 6 months old, they're past that imprinting stage. They're past the Like they're grown ups, virtually grown ups, like appearance wise, and they're mostly independent. Now, Canada geese in the wild will raise, like their babies will stay with them for at least a year, where they will continuously learn from their parents. But it actually only takes a Canada goose approximately 8 weeks to about 12 weeks, like to more like 8 to 10 weeks to fully grow up. And they usually start flying somewhere between 10 and like 14 weeks. They're flight capable, they're flying and capable of starting, to really use, like they're basically the same size as their parents at that point and fully feathered out. They grow up very, very quickly. Nugget, will you please come inside? Anyways, like I said, some of our chickens will go out routinely. They like spicy. She grew up with Nugget around. But Nugget's the only one that just stays out. She just stays out the whole time. She don't care about the rain. Personally, I think she thinks she's waterproof or something. And she usually ends up soaked at some point. And at some point, I usually end up grabbing her and bringing her inside and just drying her and keeping her in for the rest of the storm, just because I don't want her getting sick or getting too cold. Now, today it's very, very warm out, so I'm not too worried about her being wet. But anyway, so this is where we get the hybrids with the whole breeding behavior with the imprinting. When a gosling, right, imprints on something other than their own breed, their own species, it kind of opens the doors for the possibility of this gosling to self-identify as something different than what they actually are. So, for an example, if a Canada goose lays eggs in a nest and starts laying eggs in a nest, okay? So they're not going to lay a bunch of eggs in one hit, okay? They lay one egg every 1.5 to 2 days, okay? And they usually collect a certain amount of eggs before they start incubating. The reason they do this is to prevent their goslings from hatching individually, one at a time, over like several weeks. Because if that happens, they're still sitting on a nest. The eggs still require for them to incubate them, but they have a bunch of baby birds that have hatched now, and those babies need to be able to go forage and eat and drink and start growing up, right? So to keep that from happening, the eggs remain dormant until the parent starts sitting on the eggs and activates those cells inside of the egg to start developing, okay? And a parent can wait up to 2 weeks to start actually incubating their eggs. So just because you see a nest with eggs without a parent on it, especially if it's on the ground, does not mean that nest has been abandoned. Usually it means that it's a mama goose, mama duck, who's just collecting eggs. Look at Nugget getting soaked. Who's just collecting the eggs to start incubating them once she has a certain number of eggs. And it's completely up to the goose to decide when she starts incubating these eggs. So sometimes when they lay an egg and they have a prime nesting location, right? This can create an issue for them, meaning that other geese, other Canada geese, and other wild geese, like for an example, a snow goose or a cackling goose or any other wild goose that lives in the same area as them, may want that nesting spot because they're like, hey, this is a perfect spot. It's kind of hidden, but I can still see my surroundings perfectly. It's a safer spot. I want it. So then the fight starts, right? And they may become territorial, okay? Now, if the opposition, the intruder, wins and takes over the location, they're not necessarily going to kick out the egg or the eggs that the other goose already laid. In many cases, they will just leave them there and just start adding their own eggs to that nest, right? So if you now have a different breed of goose that laid an egg, or a different breed of goose that took over the nest after an egg was laid by the Canada goose, right? You end up with a Canada gosling that's being hatched out by, say, a snow goose, and that's imprinting now on a snow goose, meaning this Canada gosling is now self-identifying as a snow goose. It does not see itself as a Canada goose. It sees itself as a snow goose. It sees itself as that breed of animal, right? And when it looks at its parents that it imprinted on, it sees what it should look for in a future mate. Okay? So this is part of their learning. It's not just instinctual, it's part of their learning. So when they grow up and they get ready to mate, this adopted gosling in those cases, right? So this Canada gosling that was raised by snow geese isn't going to go looking for a Canada goose to be its mate. It's going to go looking for a snow goose. And then that particular goose, this Canada gosling, who believes it's a snow goose, okay, is going to need to try and find another goose that accepts it. Now, depending on whether or not it's male or female, it's easier or harder. But a lot of times what ends up happening is that particular goose ends up finding another goose with the same scenario, just opposite. So it'll be a scenario like, for an example, it was a snow goose egg, the Canada geese won over the nest, and that snow goose was raised by Canada geese, okay? Or maybe it was a snow goose gosling that had gotten lost or separated from its family and was adopted by a Canada goose family. And when that happens, now you have a snow goose that thinks it's a Canada goose that thinks it's a snow goose. They see each other as ideal mates because they think themselves that they are that breed, right? So it's almost like a mirror image of what they think the other one is, when in reality they are actually not. And they will then mate with this particular other goose, and generally they will mate for life. So wild geese, most wild geese actually mate for life. Canada geese definitely mate for life in the wild, okay? Actually, the only reason why domestic geese don't mate for life is actually because humans have bred it out of them after thousands of years of breeding and manipulating their instincts. So, and some of them actually still do, even in captivity. Some domestic breeds still do, even in captivity. It's just not nearly as common as it is in the wild. So now that the snow goose and the Canada goose have mated with each other, right? This is how you're now going to end up with a clutch of eggs. Yes, Teriyaki, we hear you. You are the man. So handsome. So strong. Yes, you are. You're all that and more. Well done. Happy now? Okay. Anyway, so now you've got a clutch of eggs, and when those babies hatch, you end up with a beautiful selection of absolutely unique little baby goslings that are going to be hybrids between two different breeds of geese, and sometimes even two different genuses. This is where things get complicated. Depending on the genus of the parents, okay, the genus is like kind of like a I guess the way you could categorize it is that the way you could say it is that it's kind of like categories, right? You start with a large category that goes into smaller categories, right? So for an example, a genus is the larger category of like certain geese, okay? And then this is a juvenile crowing. Anyway, so from the genus, you go down to like what breed the animal is or what species the animal is, right? Not species, what breed it is. Pretty sure that's the right term. But so you end up with a Canada goose, which is part of the Brunta genus, okay? And there's different kinds of Brunta, and then there'll be like some sort of like identifier, like it'll be Brunta some other, right? And then you have another genus that is called the Unsa, and the Unsa will be like the Unsa some other, okay? And those are different genuses, okay? And then certain genuses are very closely related, whereas others are very, very much not related, or not related, but like the relation is like hundreds of thousands to millions to hundreds of millions of or dozens of millions of years apart. So their evolution or their relation, however these species have developed or whenever they developed, or if you believe in creation, however they were created, there are variations that happened over time, right? And those variations are very long ago. Okay, so they're very much like separated from each other. And and have turned into their own individual breeds, their own individual versions, right? That have, adjusted and acclimated and in a way evolved to like to adjust to whatever surroundings they were living in. So they adjusted to being ideal for whatever scenario they live in. And you can find this with the nene goose, which is, to the best of my understanding, and I've not looked into this thoroughly, but the nene goose would be a descendant of the Canada goose, actually a, not descendant, like a split off. And it's actually, from my understanding, they ended up stuck in Hawaii, I think it was, and started adjusting and changing. And so, for an example, they lost a lot of their webbing between their toes. So instead of that kind of, that flipper that we see on waterfowl, on geese and ducks on their feet, because they live on very rocky terrain and the flippers are just were easily being torn and ripped and injured. Um, Over time, those flippers just became like the webbing in between their toes became smaller because it wasn't nearly as important for them. And it was more of a hazard to them. So it started adjusting and changing. Their appearance over time starts changing for, the purpose of survival, to fit in better, to match their surroundings better, and all of those things. So, to get back to the complication that comes now with the hybrids is that depending on the gender of, I'm sorry, not the gender. I'm trying to be as accurate as I can be. So depending on the sex of the gosling, okay, so depending on whether or not it's male or female, it can really vary on whether or not that gosling has a high or a low or any chance of having any kind of fertility, depending on how far apart the parents are related. And there's a lot of disagreements about this within the goose community. So, for an example, um, with Pretty Bird, he is a perfect example of this. We have no idea if he's fertile. These, to the best of our knowledge, are mostly not his goslings, okay? Even though he is being their daddy and he is raising them with Layla, he is most likely not their dad, okay? If anything, he may have gotten to her once before she laid the eggs, and there's a possibility one or two of them could be his, but the chances are very low, okay? Because even if he is fertile, there's a very good chance that he has low fertility. um, Pretty Bird is a mix between a Canada goose and what is considered a swan goose. Hey, 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 Blue, be nice. And you little goofy, stay with your mama. Anyways, so the swan goose belongs to the Unsa genus, and the Canada goose belongs to the Brunta genus. The swan goose is the goose that humans domesticated, and from domesticating the swan goose, we got the African goose and the Chinese goose. Okay. Pretty Bird, most likely, to the best of my knowledge, is a Chinese goose hybrid, but I generally will say he's a Canada swan goose hybrid because I have no way of knowing for sure. Because back then I was not nearly as educated when I saw his mother, like his flock that he came from. And so I was not aware of the differences, or even that there was an African and a Chinese goose, and that they looked exceptionally similar to each other. I had no idea. Um, so in his case, I've done a lot of research on this. He turned 4 this April. He's 4 years old. I hatched his egg out. And he's a one-of-a-kind unique gander. He's absolutely gorgeous, in my opinion. Kind of goofy looking sometimes in some areas, but he's definitely amazing. He's unique, and I absolutely adore him and love him. And that's his girlfriend over there, by the way. So that's his baby mama, and that's his girlfriend. Just, I've got like a telenovela going on in my backyard. I'm not even joking. Like there's extensive drama happening between these birds. Whoa, why are you turning around? Anyway, so, um, really? Thank you. Anyways, so for Pretty Bird, I did a lot of research, and the research I found actually disagrees with itself. So there's a lot of contradictions within the bird community and a lot of disagreements when it comes to the fertility of hybrids. There's also a lot of disagreements about whether or not hybrids should even be allowed to be brought into existence, or whether they should be allowed to continue on living or breeding. That little tippy tappy you see Charlie do, Charlie is this goose right there, and then that's Pretty Bird, Layla, Blue, Squirt. Anyway, that tippy tappy thing that you see her doing is to basically kick up um, bugs, worms, roots, anything in the mud, so they can forage through it, so they can kind of sieve through it with their teeth and their beaks. Anyway, so the way this works is that, based on the research I've found, based on the mo- most, in my opinion, reliable parts that I've found, the chances of Pretty Bird being fertile are decent. Um, Now, because he is from another genus, a genus that is very far removed from the Canada goose, so the swan goose is basically the Canada, like the America's version of the Canada goose. I guess in America, as in like the American continent. Um, the Canada goose is from the American continent, whereas the swan goose is from the European continent. So, and I think even Asian European, or is it Asian only? Anyways, over there on the other side. Okay. So naturally, without human interference, these two genuses, these two kind of species would not have met. Okay. But they have met because of humans, right? And somehow Pretty Bird was created. And the chances of him being fertile are there because he's male. Now, to the best of my understanding, based on the research that I've looked into, um, whenever you have two birds from two different genuses that hybridize, okay, create hybrid offspring, um, the females are always sterile. Now, keep in mind, as I said, there are a lot of disagreements in this. So, based on my research, based on what I have found so far, it suggests that the females are always sterile. The males are sometimes sterile, usually have a lower fertility, sometimes are just regular fertile, just like any other gander. But that it's only the males that ever are fertile, and the females are always infertile, unable to produce viable eggs. So there are some sources that actually suggest that it's opposite. So some sources suggest that the males are the ones that are not fertile, and the females are the ones that are fertile sometimes. So that's what I mean by there's a lot of disagreements, there's a lot of back and forth. Like I said, there's a lot of disagreements on whether or not hybrids should be outright culled. Culling is a form of basically euthanizing an animal for any reason, whether it is due to sickness or get back in there, Goofy. Yeah, that's what I thought. Anyway, whether it is due to injury or sickness, whether it is due to behavior, or whether it is due to um, it being breeding stock and their appearance is not ideal. Culling is what you call it when you put down an animal, usually on farms. It's usually the word that they use, where they, basically kill the animal for a multitude of different reasons. Um, a lot of breeders of, say, Canada geese will cull hybrids and will actively attempt to prevent hybrids. Hey, Pretty Bird, look how beautiful he is. I think he's absolutely gorgeous. I love him. Look at his orange feet. Look at them orange feet. A little more like yellowish orange feet. The reason I say yellow, you'll see why. I'll show you the African gander's feet. But look at that. Really? My phone stopped switching around. Jesus. I'm gonna hold it off to the side now. I don't need anybody to see me when I'm sick and not feeling well, sitting here in the rain with my hoodie on. Anyway, so where was I? Okay, so a lot of breeders who, from my understanding, a lot of people who breed birds will cull for multiple reasons. One of the reasons would be deformities or sicknesses, which is generally often, even in my opinion, often justified depending on the animal's quality of life, or ability to live a life with any kind of quality. Um, and then there's the other version, which I'm kind of on the fence about, to be honest. I don't really like it. I wouldn't do it. I understand why people do it, but I personally wouldn't be okay with it with my birds. And maybe it's because my birds are first and foremost pets to me. Regardless of whether or not I ever end up, see that? My phone's just switching on. Because I did not say yes to being on camera. Anyway, so, hey, Blue, pretty mama. So, the other reason for culling would be due to appearance. So we see this very commonly in yeah, and I can't even pronounce the name of this chicken properly. There's a chicken that literally has black everything. Their gums are black, their meat is black, their organs are black, their feathers are black, the whole shebang's black. Okay, it's a very deep, beautiful black color. I think you pronounce it I am Samani or AM Samani. It's AY. I forget how you spell it, but I know it starts with an A and a Y. Look at Nugget over there in the rain, hanging out. Anyway, um, so this is a breed that was created in that the ideal version of them is to be completely black and have no coloration. But sometimes they have what they consider to be flaws, where, like, for an example, there'll be some color in, um, like in their wattles, which is the pieces of, those little flaps. My daughter calls them pepperonis. Those little flaps that hang down from their chins. I'll show it to you guys. So you guys can, for anybody who doesn't know chickens, it'll make it easier to understand. Not everybody knows all the details about chickens. So a wattle are those round things you see hanging from the bottom of his face, right there. Okay? The comb is what's on top of their face, on top of their head, I mean. So it's the part that sticks up like this. It's got those, um, what's the word, the little spikes on it. It kind of looks like a mohawk. That's the comb. So some AM Samanis will have some coloration, some reddish tones in or on their comb or their wattles. It's considered to be a faulty, like like it's considered to be a bad thing. So when that happens, many breeders will do one of two things. One of them I 100% agree with and see no problem with. The other one I don't like so much. Okay? So I'll tell you the one that I don't really like so much. The reaction to the animal having any kind of characteristics that are not breed specific is to cull the animal, meaning that they kill the animal with any characteristics that they don't want to continue breeding into their flock. So in a way, it's like weeding out your flock so that you can have clean genetics in your flock, and that this particular animal that obviously has a genetic mistake in the eyes of the breeder is now removed and can therefore not continue to spread this particular genetic that would then continue to produce offspring with these markers that are considered a mistake. So some of those things would include things like this, where his comb hangs off to the side. He's had it his whole life. This is just how honey is. We joke about it being his like Justin Bieber haircut. You know what I'm saying? Like what? And I'm referring to the young Justin Bieber, like when he was a little boy, and he did that like side swing thing. Yeah, honey does that sometimes, which is hilarious. But they want the comb to be standing up perfectly, like you see on teriyaki here. And not every chicken has that. Some of them are born with defects that are just a little bit different, and that doesn't necessarily that it doesn't really have any effect on their quality of life or anything like that. It's just appearance. And when you're breeding for show quality or you're breeding for a certain level of quality bird, a lot of breeders will cull a lot of breeders will cull any animal that does not fit the standard of what they're trying to achieve. Now, on the other hand, chicken's made a mess over here. On the other hand, there are breeders who will instead sell those animals off for cheap. So, or they will even give them away. Since the animal has a flaw within their DNA, they will then offer that animal at a discount, inform people that this animal is not to be used as a purebred breeding stock because this animal has a genetic flaw. To me, that is the better solution in my personal opinion. Okay. And we all have rights to have our own opinions and have our own views on things. And anyways, so in a way, hybrids are seen the same way within some of the breeders. For some breeders who breed geese, they don't consider um, they don't consider it to be a good thing when they get a hybrid goose or gander, because that hybrid goose or gander now has a mixed bloodline, meaning that any offspring, if they are fertile, that they would generate would then have potential characteristics genetically that would not be ideal for the breed. And therefore, they often choose to cull hybrids. And they will generally try to actively avoid letting hybrids happen. So for an example, if they have a goose and a gander who attempt to be with each other, they will lock them up separately with different partners of their own breed or species. Um, me, I don't plan on doing any of that stuff. So if I end up becoming a legal Canada Goose breeder, I don't plan on making my birds lay extra eggs, like to get the numbers up, like significantly. Like if you take an egg from an animal, say like a goose who's trying to create a clutch, and you take her eggs from her, if she laid like 2 eggs and you take them away, she'll continue laying eggs. Some birds who would normally only lay like 10 to 12 eggs will continue laying eggs and will lay a total up to like 30 or 40 eggs if you keep taking them away, which in turn means that the breeder can make more money. Now, I think personally, for me, just me personally, and this is not me judging other people what they're doing, okay? I'm just telling you guys my personal, what I feel comfortable doing is that, so um, there's like a wiggle room, okay? A bird will lay anywhere, like for an example, a Canada goose will lay anywhere from 2 to 12 eggs before she starts incubating her eggs to hatch out her own clutch, okay? So most of the time it'll be 2 to 12. Sometimes you see numbers that are like 4 to 14, but it's somewhere around that corner, okay? So some people will push the animal to lay as many eggs as possible, which is a lot of strain on the animal, right? Geese are not year-long breeders. They are seasonal breeders. They only breed usually once a year. The only way they breed The only way they usually breed more than once is if, for an example, their nest was destroyed or their goslings were killed and it's still early in the breeding season. They may breed a second time and start a second clutch. But generally, they're one-time-a-year breeders. Um, so, to me, and again, this is just how I personally feel like it's okay for me to do it, is that seeing how much of a strain it is for a goose to lay an egg, I'm not comfortable with pushing a goose to lay like 40 eggs. Okay. And again, I'm giving you guys general stuff. I'm telling you guys about one side of the extreme. There are many, many breeders who breed birds who don't cull their birds, who instead will sell any birds that are not ideal, or that have separate flocks for them to still keep them because they do love them, as I do, as pets. There are plenty of breeders that um, will like just keep their animals separately. So like during breeding season, right before it starts, they will separate their goose flock into breed specific flocks to prevent any crossbreeding from happening. So there doesn't need to be any culling or any, destruction of eggs or any separation of birds that have already made it. Okay, so there are people that do preventative measures to prevent this stuff where they're really not like they're basically avoiding causing the animal like major distress or anything like that. So and I'm just putting that out there because I don't want people to think that I'm saying like, hey, everybody in the bird community does this. No, they don't. There's a huge variety of people that do many different things and are comfortable with many different things, and no two people are 100% alike. And and I myself am not even part of that breeder community yet, and I'm just telling you guys what I've seen, what I've learned, what I've read, what I've been told, what I've communicated with people about, the reactions I've seen from people when I talk about the possibility of hybrids or hybrid breeding, um, because I was curious how people react to that. So I actually asked people, like on Facebook, can you guys imagine? On bird groups. And I wasn't trying to be a troll or anything. I was just literally just curious how people in general, not specifically breeders, just people in general felt about hybrid Canada geese, because I realized there was a lot of Canada goose breeders. Well, not a lot, but there were several Canada goose breeders, but I saw none of them with hybrids. As in, to the best of my knowledge, I'm the only Canada goose owner in the US that I've found so far that actually owns a hybrid and that actually loves hybrids and thinks hybrids are absolutely amazing. I have found one other breeder who actually thinks that hybrids are really cool. And that person has not like bred any hybrids or anything like that, but that person does believe that hybrids are very cool, especially Canada hybrids. So it's not like a common thing, you know? And so to get back to the egg thing, look at the chickens going around as a flock. So what I have kind of looked into is that, it takes a lot of energy from the goose to produce the eggs. It takes a lot of energy to lay the eggs, to maintain the nest, and all those things, right? It's a lot of work for the goose to do, and part of me would feel guilty to kind of force her to keep going or make her keep going, even encouraging her, however you want to word it, to lay a significant amount of eggs. Again, like I said, not every breeder does this. um, I wouldn't be able to tell you how many breeders do this, okay? I know some do it. I've heard of some. No idea what the percentage would be or how many or if it's super common or not common at all. No idea. So that's not what I'm trying to say here. But basically, when I thought about it, the conclusion I came to was that I understand wanting to get a couple of extra eggs, because when you're breeding the birds, it's part of your livelihood, right? It's part of how you make an income. And so I understand that factor. but I also want the birds to not have negative so that I can have positive, right? They breed every year regardless. So, in my opinion, whatever the bird's average is, so for an example, for a buff, an American buff, if I remember correctly, and I could be very wrong about just numbers, but I wanted to give you guys an example, like, um, let's just say it's all made up. All numbers are made up here, okay? For this particular example. So let's say a buff lays an average 12 eggs for one nest, okay? A buff, an American buff, is what Layla is. Layla is a show quality uh, breed ideal. Show quality basically means she is ideal for her breed. Okay, so she is the standard, what you would consider. That's Layla right there with her babies. She is what you would consider an ideal specimen, or very, at the minimum, very close to the ideal specimen. That's what show quality basically means. When somebody tells you show quality, it means those birds are bred to be a very specific standard of that breed or species. And let's say Layla's species generally lays an average of 12 eggs for each clutch, which is each nest, okay? And she usually has one nest a year, okay? Let's say I'm a breeder and I want to make extra money, right? I want to make as much money as I want, right? But I also don't want to make her lay 40 eggs because that's a significantly larger amount than 12 eggs, right? So for me, thinking about it, it's kind of like a few extra eggs. So if you think of in the wild, a goose will deal with predators and such, right? And eggs will be taken by predators on a fairly regular basis, right? So when they lay their eggs, and as I said earlier, collecting their eggs to start incubating their eggs, right? Um, there's likely going to be some losses, right? Some of their eggs will have been destroyed by a fox, a raccoon, or whatever. And then they will go on and they will replace those eggs, right? And that's kind of the mentality that I approached this from the idea of, okay, like, what is like something where it's still reasonable, right? And it's not going to cause this animal to basically, have to overdo herself, right? And go on and on and on. But also a way that if I do ever become a breeder, I can, generate a profit from breeding this animal. And the conclusion I came to is that if an animal's average is 12 to 15, I wouldn't want to go over 20. You know what I'm saying? So like a handful, so like 3, 4, 5 eggs extra. Sure, I can see that being reasonable. Um, but anything beyond that, it just would make me feel very guilty to kind of make them keep going. You guys can check out my short videos. And I'm talking about if I wanted to make, like, if I wanted to encourage my bird to lay more eggs. I'm talking about big ifs here. I'm currently not a breeder. I do not breed to sell birds yet. I've not even decided 100% if I'm going to be moving forward with that. My flock is currently a hobby flock that I'm building, with the potential future of becoming a breeder flock, maybe. Um, and that's not even something that I see as being like a main focus or anything. It just means as I may become a legal breeder because I may end up with offspring that I may not be able to or may not be wanting to keep in the future. So I may end up with the paperwork that I can legally sell, for an example, Canada goslings, which right now I'm not legally allowed to sell them. I'm legally allowed to keep them. Like if my birds have babies, I can keep them. And there's no issue with that because they're mine. I'm not selling them. And I have, the documentation for their parents. And I still need to do more research on that specifically. But to the best of my knowledge right now, I wouldn't have to do a whole lot more to keep their offspring. But when it comes to selling any offspring that my Canada geese would have, I would have to have a state permit So basically I'd have to go through my state to get an additional permit, okay, additional piece of paper that would make it legal for me to sell Canada geese. And every time I sold, look at these, they're getting ready to do dust bathing. They're making a mess. What are you guys doing? Aren't these guys just the cutest little chickens? And by the way, she's not getting torn up. The little one, Crispy, she's not getting torn up. If you look at her, you'll notice she's much less fluffy than the one next to her, and her feathers are much tighter together and much more curly. It's actually because whoever bred these guys, I purchased these guys at Tractor Supply. Whoever bred them made a mistake and actually went ahead and bred two that look like her together. And you're not supposed to do that. You never want to double up the curly genetics within chickens because their feathers are not really supposed to be curly. So, um, you always want to breed a smooth feathered bird to a curly bird, not a curly bird to a curly bird. Because if you breed two curly birds, you end up with a bird that has too much curl because they have two parts of the genetic, and they get a double curl basically, meaning that their feathers end up being very brittle, they don't stick as well, and their feathers are easily torn out. This is just a little side note. If you guys have ever considered, or if anybody coming across this live has frizzles, this is what these are called. That's a frizzle. This one would be considered a frazzle. She Did you lay an egg? Did you lay an egg? Yes, Mama. That's what they do. She's announcing that she laid an egg. She's like, look at me. Look at me, everyone. I laid an egg, guys. Guys. Guys, did you hear? Did you hear I laid an egg? I did it. Anyway, so yeah, so in my mind, when it comes to the whole encouraging or causing your bird to lay more eggs, to me, I understand the reasoning behind it, especially when it's part of your income and part of the way that you care for your family and your children. Um, but I also personally feel like I wouldn't be comfortable pushing that too hard, pushing that too far. So I feel like if that was ever something that I considered doing, I would likely stay, like, not likely, I would stay, if I ever did it, I would stay within the very smaller numbers because I just don't feel comfortable with the idea of making the bird lay dozens and dozens more of eggs that they normally wouldn't lay. Again, this could be a very uneducated opinion. These are just opinions I've generated researching about geese, breeding, about reproduction, about how breeders go about what they do, talking to different breeders, being on breeders' forums and reading what they say and what they conversate about. So this is not like a, hey, I'm a breeder and I know what I'm talking about. I'm just sharing with you guys, opinions and thoughts that I've had over the time that I've looked into this. Sorry, my birds had dumped a bucket over here, and that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to find everything they dumped out. Because you guys are spoiled little troublemakers. Yes, you are. Spoiled little troublemaker. Anyway, to get this to be a done subject here, basically, when it comes to the breeding thing, there's a lot of complications that come in when it comes to what you're morally comfortable with, what you're morally not comfortable with, what your opinions are, how you see the animal you may or may not be breeding. And there's a lot of stuff to consider, guys. Like, it seems so simple when you consider it, like without the research, without the extended thought process. It really seems very simple. Like, hey, I'll just, let the birds have, their babies and then I'll sell them. Well, there's much more to it, guys. Much more to it. You have to consider a lot of different things when it comes to that. I mean, outside of even just the money, there's a lot of things about the animal itself that um, really can affect and change how you go about it, how you view it, how you think about it, um, how it ends up working out, um, what kind of properties you may or may not need for certain animals. Like there are some animals that are much more territorial than others, and there's just a lot more to it. There's just a lot more to it, and it's not always as easy as it sounds. Um, though I must say, if anybody is thinking about becoming a livestock breeder or keeping livestock, that you also plan on selling the offspring. Like, for an example, if you plan on keeping any kind of bird as a pet, but you also plan on potentially selling their offspring, um, basically to make some money on the side. The two animals I would honestly mostly recommend people to consider are chickens and geese, because chickens will literally provide you with a daily benefit. Okay. Most of your chickens will lay for probably anywhere from 2 to 4 days a week for most chicken breeds. So depending on how many chickens you have, that can be an to average you out at like a dozen eggs a week at least. And if you have an area where your chickens have, hi, excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Can I check? Do you mind if I check? I know you're busy. I know you're busy. Can I check? Can I check real quick? Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry. Sorry, sweetheart. I thought your sister said she laid an egg. Gotta go check the other one. Anyways, but depending on how many chickens you have, and depending on like what your what your goal is with the animals, are you keeping them for like the eggs? Are you keeping them as pets? Some people joke and say it's pets with benefits because pets with that pay rent. You know, um, no, there's many different ways of viewing it. Some people specifically keep chickens because of the eggs, because chickens are very smart. They can be very loving. They can be fun pets. Mad. Anyways, they can be fun pets. They're very smart. You can even train the chickens to do things. And yeah, there's a lot of variety to having chickens that a lot of people like. Not variety, but a lot of factors to having chickens that a lot of people are not aware of, that are definitely useful to know of. And if you have the space for your birds, like if you have the space for chickens, you can totally, totally um, save a lot of money when it comes to their feed. It's completely up to you, whatever you're comfortable with when it comes to the feed. Hey, Squirt. I know, little mama, I know. You're hungry? Hi, Squirt. And she's just the cutest thing. And me playing around in a bowl, I do that on purpose. It's part of how I desensitize my birds, especially the ones that were not imprinted on me since they hatched. Since Squirt joined us when she was about 6 months old, my relationship with her is not as tight as it is with many of my other birds. Hey, Squirt. Hi, pretty mama. You're so cute. Where you going, lady? Such a cutie pie. And she's about 2 years old now. And yes, she's an adult. Hi, Pibbert. You want some num nums? Yeah, you haven't eaten your grain today because you ran out and it was raining and I had the grain inside the aviary. Gotta eat your grain, Bubba's. Num 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 num. Hey, Charlie. And if anybody's curious about how the heck I managed to own Canada geese legally, um, I know I've mentioned it in many videos before, but I'm definitely gonna be looking into making a video where I discuss this. Ow, that's my leg, dude. Where I discuss this in detail of how I got my Canada geese and how anyone could own Canada geese legally. Here you go, babies. Layla. Here you go, Layla. Layla. What the heck is this? That's not supposed to be in here. Anyways, I'll be happy to explain to you guys how I got my Canada geese. And I also plan on giving a couple of breeders a shout out. So if you live in their states or within a close distance to where they're comfortable shipping to, um, there is a breeder that I know that sells and ships eggs. There's a breeder that I know that sells and ships goslings. And there's a breeder that I know that is in another state where they are local. They sell locally, they don't ship. To the best of my knowledge, outside of their state, they only do within their state sales. But yeah, it's definitely an amazing breed. Um, Not these crazy, evil, mean, aggressive animals that they're made out to be at all. They are absolutely amazing birds. They're beautiful. They have the funniest, silliest personalities. They're individuals who have their own little opinions, their own little likes and dislikes, and they're so much fun. And if you have the time and you have the will to dedicate and you have those things in place, then it can be amazing to keep these guys as pets. But keep in mind that it is important that you do your research. You should never get any animal, for that matter, without doing your research first. I almost lost my shoe. Without doing your research first and knowing about that specific breed, that specific species, knowing what you're getting yourself into, knowing what kind of care that animal requires, um, and what it needs you to do for them to basically provide a good life for them. Look, the grass is finally growing back over here. Yay! Yay! Keeping the chickens away from here definitely is making a difference. Anyway, um, and to familiarize yourself with how much work it actually takes and how much dedication it actually takes to have these animals and provide them with a happy, healthy life. Um, Always learning. So it's not that is absolutely not true. You're likely going to continue learning for years. You're also very likely to make many, many, many mistakes along the way. But you should know what you're getting yourself into. You know, the like for an example, the oldest Canada goose that was reported and confirmed in captivity was 48, guys. 48 years old. Think about that for a second. 48 years old. The oldest Canada goose in the wild was 33, was shot by a hunter. It had a leg band that had been put on this goose 33 years earlier. And there's no way of knowing if that goose was older. That's the minimum age this goose was. That goose was at least 33 years old and had survived in a wild for 33 years. And the reason why that's such a big deal is because, hey, ladies, get back in here. Ladies. Anyway, the reason why that's such a big deal is because the average lifespan for a Canada goose in the wild, when it comes to predators, hunters, and everything else, and dogs and all the other stuff, okay, is 6 years. 6 to 10 years is the average lifespan of a wild Canada goose. Now, keep in mind, each Canada goose takes 2 to 3 years, sometimes even 4 years, before they're ready to find a mate, settle down, and have goslings. So half of the time, though, so let's say the average is 6 years. A lot of my research suggests that the average lifespan of a wild Canada goose was around 6 years, okay? Like starting at about 6 years. So let's say it's 6 years, the average lifespan. They take, an average, about 3 years to mature before they start mating and having babies, okay? So they only get 3 seasons. So each goose only ever, in average, has 3 clutches of babies. Out of each clutch, the survival percentage, I think, is like 50 or 60%. So the average clutch size, the average nest size, the average amount of eggs that a Canada goose will lay is around 2 to 12 or 4 to 14. So just, think about just think about it for a second. They're definitely not reproducing as fast as mice and rats are, to put it, a little bit more blunt. It's not like they're having 17 clutches a year and each clutch has got like 50 babies in it. You know what I mean? They're not constantly producing. And you've got to keep in mind, these animals are very family oriented. So once they mate for life. Once they've mated for life, they actually have an emotional connection to their mate and to their goslings. So when a gosling dies, or a gosling, or a nest is broken, and or if, say, for example, ooh, dandelion, pretty bird, found a dandelion, buddy. Let's put this over here. So if their nest is broken, a gosling dies, or their mate dies, a goose, the Canada goose, will actually mourn their loss. They will mourn the loss of their mate. They will mourn the loss of their gosling. They will even mourn the loss of an egg and the loss of a destroyed nest. So, Canada geese are highly emotional animals who are very family oriented. Okay? Just because they're animals doesn't mean they don't have feelings. And that's one of the things that's kind of funny, because in the past, wished between, humans and animals was that humans were unique because we were capable of love, right? And Canada geese are capable of, get this, high emotional attachment that you could, for all intents and purposes, call love. They're capable of loss, experiencing loss. Um, and when I say they mourn their spouse when their spouse dies, um, I'm not exaggerating, guys. They will mourn depending on how long they were with their spouse. Okay, when they were with their spouse for a long time, this is actually more likely to happen. Which is that when their spouse passes or is killed, the goose may mourn so much that they end up committing suicide because they won't eat. They go into such a depression. And watch, YouTube's gonna lose their mind because I use that word. They go in such a deep depression that they actually end up, wasting away, dying because they're so heartbroken. They literally die from heartbreak. And I think that fact is heartbreaking in itself, that that's what they go through, you know? Um, I actually joke sometimes because, whoa, pretty bird. I actually joke sometimes because some people will be like, stop humanizing the goose, right? Or stop humanizing an animal. And I'll joke, because I'm a little bit of a smart aleck. And I'll be like, oh, no, 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 no. I'm not humanizing them, guys. I'm saying they're better than humans. I know. I think I'm very funny. Anyway, but there are a lot more similarities than we believed that there were in the past. And I find those things fascinating. I find them interesting. I know a lot of people probably think this is the most boring thing in the world, but there's a lot of things that I've learned just over the last 4 years keeping Pretty Bird. And it's been one hell of a ride with this goose. He's been a great addition to my family. He's brought us lots of joy. Having these birds has been an amazing educational tool for my children. I do homeschool my children, and it's been amazing educationally. Uh, Even just using the birds as an example for different scenarios and such, explaining different things or understanding different, like it just, they've learned a lot of responsibility through these animals. Like for an example, Nugget, see, she's smart. Hey, Nugget, come here. Come on, lady. Come on, Nugget. 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 Come here, Nugget. Hi, Nugget. Anyways, this chicken right here, hand raised from scratch since she was a little hatchling. She was hand raised by my daughter. This chicken was saved by my daughter, actually. She had a really bad case of pasty butt as a chick. And I will get you a treat, mamas. I'm sorry I made you upset. Anyway, um, so she had a really bad case of pasty butt. And pasty butt basically means that they have poop stuck on the back of their vent, and their vent is where their poop and their eggs come out of. So it's basically the opening. In a way, it's their butthole, but chickens have one hole. So everything comes out of that one hole. Okay, so everything else leads to one hole on the outside, and that's called their vent. Okay, and pasty butt. Come on, ladies, let's go. Come on, ladies, back in. Let's go. Come on, back inside. Come on, ladies, back inside. Let's go. No, not that way. Let's go. Come on. Go, go, go. I spoke too soon when I said the chickens don't come over here. Ah. By the way, I've planted all of these dandelions. My kids and I would go around and we collect a bunch of dandelion seeds. Fine, I'll put you back manually. I need to separate out a juvenile roosters. They're starting to pull my chickens apart. Too many roosters in one flock. Anyway, so what's it called? With Nugget, she had pasty butt, but by see, my chickens are not absolutely terrified of us, so it's a little bit easier for me to catch them. A little bit easier, not always easy, trust me. But so not only did my daughter end up saving this baby chick, but the way that she had to do it was because Nugget had such a bad case of pasty butt, which was completely blocking her vent. kind of like being severely constipated with poop, and it having hardened not only on the outside of the baby's body, but also on the inside of the vent. So there was basically like a plug, right? And the first thing that had to be done is the plug had to be loosened, okay, to remove the plug. But what usually happens in those situations is that because the baby was not able to process any of its food properly and not able to get any of the waste out, not only was the baby's body or the little baby chick's body, 1 second, guys. Sorry, I had to grab a chicken. Um, Not only was that chick's body now exposed to additional toxins within that waste, you're not going to come back out. Stop it. But then to top it off, that chick's body has not been able to absorb nutrients properly, and and by the way, you never want to just remove the plug. You actually need to use warm water and soak it and slowly kind of soften it so that you can wipe it off and slowly make it fall off. Never ever rip off like anything from your animals. Always soften it and be real gentle because you can cause some serious damage otherwise. Um, Anyways, so in Nugget's case, it was bad, and she ended up being about a third of the size of all of her siblings. So her siblings were like 3 times her size, right? And they were all the same age. But Nugget had become so stunted in development because she was no longer capable of absorbing the nutrients that she was probably a day or two away from death, most likely. Okay. And in this case scenario, we were, hey, Patches. Hey, Simba. Hi, boys. Hi, babies. Come here. Hi, buddy. You and your butt. You and your butt. Always the butt. Yes. Hey, Patches. How you feeling, bud? Haven't seen you in a minute, huh? He's one of the stray kitties in our neighborhood that I take care of, or that we take care of. My daughter named him Patches. Hey, Simba. Don't be jelly. Simba. Kitties. Simba. Come here, Simba. Hi, kitty. Yeah, we're keeping you. Yes, we are. Hey, Patches. Hey, Patches. He loves his butt scratched. He's such a weirdo. Anyways, um, so Nugget was really bad off. So once you remove the plug from a chick that has pasty butt, what ends up happening is because of all that poop that's been backed up in their body, it's really soft. Once you get that plug out and the hard stuff's out of the way, you basically have a whole lot of diarrhea. And the body is kind of just pushing because it's been trying to get everything out all this time. So what ends up resulting in it ends up resulting in the chick um like just pushing out everything and basically going into like full on just diarrhea. Okay. And when that happens, the baby is rapidly, um, the chick is rapidly, what's the word? Dehydrating. Okay. Which is exceptionally dangerous for these babies. And what ends up happening is that you have to try to keep them hydrated and keep them fed and get them through this period of time, which can go on for like a couple of days even. So during that time, my daughter throughout the day and then me throughout the night, because she was only about, let's see, this was 3.5 years ago. So she was about 9-ish, 8.5, 9-ish years old. So I wasn't comfortable with her having to get up every 30 minutes at night. Um, so I was doing the night shift and my daughter was doing the day shift. And what we did is we kept a very close eye on Nugget, and we would feed and carefully feed her water every 30 minutes to an hour. Okay. And Nugget made it through. She survived. My daughter did this all day long, and I didn't make her do this. My daughter wanted to do this. This is something that she chose to do. She straight up told me that she wanted to do it throughout the day. She wanted that responsibility. She saved this chicken's life, and then proceeded to convince us that she could keep it and continue to care for it. And I mean, you know, we were like, okay, prove us that you can do it, because that's literally what she said. She said, hey, if I can prove you over the next couple of weeks that I'll do a really good job taking care of Nugget, can I keep her? And I was like, honey. And then she goes, what? You have a pet goose? And I was like, ah, crap. I mean, what do you say to that? You know what I'm saying? Like, I had a pet goose. What am I supposed to say when she asks for a pet chicken? You know what I mean? Anyway, and I'm being silly right now, but my kids have always been very good and mature about animals. So, maybe it's because they've been part of animal rescue their whole life. I don't know what it is, but they've always been part of it. I've never forced them into it. It's always been their choice, and they've always enjoyed it. And my daughter is more involved in it than my son, but my son's definitely involved in it as well. And they both just very much enjoy and love animals. So my daughter then proceeded to raise this animal and raise her very, very well. Even trained her to do a few things through rewarding training, of course. And yeah, Nugget was an indoor pet chicken for the first, what, like year and a half of her life, something around there. And then we moved out here to Texas, where she became an outdoor chicken, and we got her chicken friends finally, and we got Pretty Bird his goose friends, and Nugget never stopped being a goose. She remained with the geese. She just never really wanted much to do with the chickens. She seemed to just never really fit in. And so I'm collecting dandelions for my little babies inside. Um, so she just never really showed any interest in hanging out with the chickens, and especially not the roosters. And she barely even reacts if the roosters find treats and stuff. She just doesn't recognize it as being her group of birds. Like, she excuse me, she sees the geese as being her flock. And as you could see in this live stream today, like, she'll stay out through the whole storm. If the geese are outside, Nuggets outside. She's part of the goose flock, and the geese have pretty much accepted her. Um, she's just kind of there, and they'll chase off any other chicken that gets anywhere near them. Like, they want their bubble. They don't want the chickens to come into their bubble, but they have accepted Nugget to be part of them. Happy Mother's Day! Thank you for that. Thank you, Ray. I am doing the things that I love. I enjoy being outside. I enjoy collecting stuff, spoiling my birds, and here in a little bit, I'm gonna go back in, and I'm gonna be going and hanging out with my babies, with my children, and right now they're having themselves some playtime on the computer, and so I'm having me some me time. You know. Anyway, but yeah, I appreciate the well wishes. I really do. Um, but yeah, so my daughter did an absolutely amazing job raising up Nugget, and Nugget has turned out to be literally the best chicken ever. We are a little worried for her. My daughter is terrified because Nugget is getting older, and when we got Nugget, we got her because she had pasty butt. So we really didn't have any knowledge about what breed she was, how long she would live, anything like that. We had initially gotten her just to save her life, and that was the only thing that we had planned at that time. There was no plan beyond that. We were not even planning on keeping her. We were going to find her a nice farm to go join, and that, of course, changed when my daughter requested to keep her and to finish raising her and have her be part of the family. So after that, of course, we did our research and we figured out that Nugget is a black star. And here's the problem with black stars. Much like many other domesticated animals, chickens have been bred to basically benefit humans in specific ways. And one of the ways that chickens benefit humans is by laying eggs. Well, Nugget, her specific breed, the Black Star breed, was bred for two purposes: laying eggs and meat production. Okay. So they're generally what you call, they are called a dual purpose breed. So they have two purposes: eggs and meat. Okay. I would argue that they have much more purpose than that, but that's a personal opinion. Um, so the thing with Nugget being a dual purpose breed and being bred for eggs is that her breed does not live very long. Chickens in average can live, you know, usually they live if they live a healthy life, they can live 15 years, okay? 10 to 15 years. So literally their life expectancy is very similar to that of a dog. Um, but in Nugget's case, her life expectancy is only 3 to 5 years. Nugget is currently 3.5 years old. Um, she's about 6 months younger than Pretty Bird. And we are looking into the possibilities of how we can help her not die due to breed specific issues, um, prematurely, and continue living a quality life. And this is important for people to understand. I'm not trying to force survival. I'm not trying to make her survive for personal gain. I'm trying to keep her from a painful death. Nugget's breed is very prone to passing away from being egg bound or from prolapse. Both of these things are specifically caused due to Nugget being a high production chicken, meaning that Nugget being bred to lay eggs. Some chickens will lay, almost every day. They'll lay 2 to 4 eggs a week. And in Nugget's case, her breed is specifically bred to lay a crap ton of eggs. And a black star can lay around 340 eggs a year. Now just think about that for a second. How many days are in a year? 365. Nugget can lay 340 eggs a year. So she really doesn't get much of a break. And it is not normal for birds generally to lay eggs this much. It's something that we've bred into chickens. To the best of my knowledge, that's what we've bred them to do. And it can be a issue for them in the long run. So for Nugget, there's a good chance that she'll pass away from becoming egg bound or from a prolapse. And I'm doing my research and I'm trying to find out if there are ways I can prevent that from happening, if there are things I can do to help her stay healthier, um, if there are things I can do to prevent her from becoming egg bound or from experiencing a prolapse, a vent prolapse, or an intestine prolapse, or anything like that. Um, Egg bound, for anybody who doesn't know, means that the egg becomes stuck inside of the chicken and the chicken cannot get it out, which and it can cause many other issues. And keep in mind, their vent is the only opening they have for any waste and for their eggs. So not only will it block her from being able to go number two to the bathroom, but it will also block her from being able to lay additional eggs, meaning that she'll have eggs getting backed up in her system if that happens, and it will cause her to pass away. Um, and of course, we don't want that. That would be a horrible thing. And I'm trying to learn about these things and see what I can do to prevent that from happening. Um, some of the things that we've done with Nugget is to really focus on her having the healthiest diet possible that we can afford. We make sure she gets lots of healthy treats and just things like that. Trying to prevent as much as we can, try to prevent her from ever suffering from anything like that. A lot of eggs is to actually limit their daylight. So their egg laying increases in the summer, the spring and the summer, and then decreases in the winter. Some chickens will even completely stop laying. Nugget is not one of them. Um, but so in Nugget's case, one of the things that we're considering is to have Nugget start spending her nights indoors like she used to. And then every day, probably around noon or so, we would let her join her flock to go forage outside. And by doing that, we would limit her daytime hours to around 8 hours a day, which would match the hours of the day during the winter time. Meaning that she would then in turn lay significantly less eggs, hopefully, which would then hopefully give her body a break from laying all those eggs and make her hopefully less likely to suffer from things like becoming egg bound and such, um, and or suffering from a prolapse, which are the things that we're worried about because these things are deadly, um, to especially black stars. So, like I said, I'm doing a lot of research about this stuff. I heard about hormones you can give chickens to make them stop laying. Now, please don't misunderstand. I am not saying that that's what I plan on doing over here. Um, I'm saying that I've heard about it, and when in my attempt to research about it and just learn about it, because I was like, hormones for chickens? What? Like that sounded, very foreign in my mind. Never heard about it before, didn't even know it was even a possibility or a thing. Um, and when I tried to look into it on one of the chicken groups on the internet in Facebook, Lord, did people blow up on me. They were very mad. Um, I don't know if it's how I formulated it, but my intent was to ask if anybody had heard about this, if anybody knew about this, and like what the side effects looked like, and like what it was like, if their vets had told them about it or anything, what experience they had with it, basically, right? If anybody had experience with it and what the dangers were, right? And just kind of gave a quick explanation of who Nugget is and why I'm curious about it, right? And why I'm asking. I guess people thought that by me asking, it meant that I was planning on using the hormones on my chicken, on my daughter's chicken, and they got really upset with me. Um, Started saying that was basically abusive, um, and basically that I need to stop coddling my child, and yeah, they were very angry. Related correctly, um, I have no concrete plans at this time for anything for Nugget other than taking her indoors periodically and like changing the hours of the day for her through keeping her in a darker area for longer overnight and then in the morning and then letting her out later than the other birds. Other than that, I have not come up with anything that I would know about working or that could be helpful or okay to do with a chicken without it, causing, you know, bad issues. So, yeah. Um, and just to make clear, I'm not planning on giving my daughter's chicken, anything I am literally just researching, different things that people mention on the internet, and I'm trying to find out, hey, what's that? What's this? Because I haven't heard of many of those things before, and I am not someone who's comfortable putting medication into any living being without being fully informed about what's going on, what the side effects are going to be. You know, personally, I prefer extended research, and part of that research is to ask about anecdotal experiences, to see what people's personal experience was with whatever, you know, medication or product or whatever they may have used or whatever advice they may have gotten. Um, I like asking people with experience about their opinions, and yeah, because I believe there's a lot of value in personal experience and how people um like how it's gone for people who have lived it, people who have done it, people who've seen it. Um, it's a different, it's a value, and in my opinion, it's an interesting and valuable source of information. It's not the only source of information. I'm just saying it's an interesting and valuable source of information. And I personally like hearing opposite views on things. I like hearing different perspectives on things. Oh, looky there. That looks like it belongs to a tarantula, doesn't it? Where are you, little one? Are you hiding? You guys think? You think that belongs to a tarantula? Not very big. This is my finger. Huh. Very cute. Very cute. Anyway, and yes, I'm one of those people who likes tarantulas. Not like as like I want to sit there, own one, cuddle one. Just like as in like I find them to be very interesting animals, and don't mind them at all. Anyway, so yeah, to sum up that subject though about Nugget, anybody has ideas or has had experience with losing a chicken early, learning about what maybe can be done, could have been done, saving an animal, like a chicken from suffering from something that is very likely to happen to their particular breed, please do leave info in the comments. I would love to read it. Um, I'm very interested to read it. And yeah, I would appreciate that. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go inside. I'm going to go hang out with my bubbas and go watch a movie, relax. I think I'm going to have me a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich today. Yeah. I'm telling you guys, them eggs from back here are so much better. And I know a lot of people say that it's, placebo effect or whatever, that there isn't actually a taste difference between backyard chicken eggs and the eggs that you buy from a store. But I used to not be able to eat eggs regularly. I used to not really like eggs that much. Um, I had an issue with eating more than a couple of eggs in a sitting, like, as in, like, even just like a plate of scrambled eggs where two eggs had been scrambled. I would love the first two or three bites, and then I would get this just weird aftertaste of just like, ugh, and I would not be capable of finishing my meal. Okay. Like, that is literally the most accurate description I can give you of like how chicken? Are you kidding? That's like the most accurate description I can give you of how eggs are for me. They are like how they were for me before I had chickens. And once we got, come here, buck, 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 come here, buck, buck, buck. Oh, really? You little butt. Back in the backyard, woman. Let's go. Come on. Don't be stupid. Let's go. Thank you. Escape, chicken. I'm getting her back there. Anyway, I know I've said this before, but that's going to be it for today. I'm going to go ahead and get off here. I got some other stuff to do, and I will talk to all of you guys later, okay? Thanks to anybody who hung out with me today on Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to anybody out there who is a mama. Happy Parents' Day for everybody who is maybe a single parent and maybe has to be mom, or somebody who isn't one of the parents but has to be mom and dad. Um, I do think that this day is a special day for everyone, just to take a moment to remember the people who play that parent role in your life, and you know, and take a moment and be grateful for your mamas, especially when you have mothers who are good mothers, mothers who are genuinely trying to be good mothers. Um, Sadly, I don't have a relationship with my mother, but that's a story for another time, maybe one day. Nope. All right, I'm gonna get off this so I can catch a chicken. All right, y'all have a good day. Happy Sunday. Happy Mother's Day. Bye bye.